Pulavinak, and welcome to another segment of Speak Your Mind this Monday. Also, it's well recorded for television purposes for Tuesday at 10:30 in the evening and also for Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Now, I'm your host, Serafina Wedlock. Now, a few weeks back, we had the World Day of Safety and Health that was commemorated across the globe. Now, the Ministry of Labour and also Industrial Relations and Employment was actually responsible for the activities here in the country. Now, we've actually got the Minister of Labour with us this afternoon, who's taken the day off to come and actually taken the day or the afternoon to come and speak a little bit more about this and also the role of the Ministry of Labour as a whole. Minister, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Afternoon.
And we've also got with him the manager or his manager of complaints and resolution team, Mr. Thomasi Kenny. Mr. Thomasi, thank you so much for joining us as well. Okay, Minister, tell us a little bit more about the role of the Ministry of Labour, Public Relations and also Employment.
Well, probably the role of my ministry can really be captured in the dream that we have for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the vision that we have.
Right.
Our vision as a ministry comes out of the vision of government, which is to build a better Fiji for everybody in this country. But in my vision, in my ministry, we try to capture this in two key terms.
Okay.
What do we want to have? We want to have a Fiji where there is decent work for everybody who's employed,
Mm-hmm.
and all that work is as productive as possible. That is basically what the ministry does. It tries to make sure that if anybody is employed, whether they're employed by anybody else, that work that person has meets certain conditions of decency,
Right.
in terms of remuneration, in terms of respect for that person, in terms of making sure that the workplace is safe and so forth. Secondly, and as I always stress in all my roadshows, it's not just for the workers to get what's due to them, but there's an obligation to make sure that all our workplaces are as productive as possible.
True.
We need to increase productivity. If companies do well, schools do well, all this does well. We have greater wealth created in this country, and as a result, we can build a stronger Fiji. So that's the basis of what we do. But then underneath that, we have three major things that we try to focus on. First is social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I define social justice is, in our laws, we have things that are set out in the laws on what workers can expect. You get social justice when you get what the law says that you should get.
Right.
In terms of bereavement leave, annual leave, and so forth.
So the entitlements.
The entitlements. Secondly, we believe that one of the strongest things in this country to make the country strong is to create a kind of a climate, a relationship
Right.
between workers and their employers.
Mm.
We want to have an employment relationship that is built on good faith,
True.
where they talk to each other, they are honest with each other, and by building that relationship, we can have a stronger industrial relations climate, absence of strikes, people's needs are met, and the country can succeed. And the last thing that you want to have is to make sure that all workplaces are safe for the people that work there and that they are driven by productivity. So in a nutshell, everything that we do revolves around this vision and the mission of what we're trying to accomplish as a ministry.
Nice. So far, from when you became Minister for Labour, have you seen that has actually changed, and has the ministry actually worked or achieved at least part of the goal that the vision that the ministry has set out for themselves?
Well, the process of making changes in a vision is something that you don't accomplish overnight.
Exactly.
But you put in place steps and systems and processes to try to get you there. So one of the biggest emphasis that we've had over the past 2 years since I've been here, and there has been emphasis to this in the past, is the emphasis on measuring customer satisfaction.
Right.
The idea is that you don't know how well you have done unless your customer tells you that you've done.
That's right.
Sometimes in government ministries, we can be looking internally at ourselves, at our own targets, what we set our own targets. But if we have met 100% of our targets and our customers are still complaining, then where is the effectiveness of everything that we've done?
True.
That's one of the major things that we're focused. And the second thing that we're focused on is improving all of our processes and all of our systems. My ministry is the first one that is now going for ISO 9001 certification. Because we put in a quality policy, quality objectives, we put standard operating procedures. We're trying to inculcate this vision, this ethic of producing things on a customer basis.
So what does that entail? Like
it's a quality management system. It's largely used by in the private sector. Initially, it was set up, a standard that was set up by the British, now used internationally for the private sector. To means the top private sector organizations, if they meet these standards, then they have put in place a quality management system that ensures that they have consistency in terms of their services or products.
Okay.
And there's an inbuilt mechanism of improvement of kaizen, of continual improvement.
So they get this as from feedbacks from the customers and also its clients.
Yes, that sort of system is built into the ISO 9000. So there's
Okay.
this emphasis on making sure that the way we are doing things is constantly improving, so we can attain that vision. And it's a moving target. Customers' expectations are not the same yesterday as
That's
they are
true.
today. As you produce things for them, what used to be exceptional last year, today is expected.
Exactly.
So that keeps changing, and that is what we're trying to do.
And they've already implemented this ISO quality management.
We've done our first audit. We're now into the second audit, but then programs have been created across the board. So it takes time to do these things. You need to put in new processes and new culture as things change. Gradually, you begin to see the results. But I think overall, the good thing about the ministry is there has been a focus. If you want to make an impact on a country, rather than just twiddling around with little things here and there,
Right.
you've got to change the whole process by which things done. If you change the process, you have a bigger impact on the outcome. The way to do this in government is to change the laws. You change the law, you change the kind of outcome you have for your people.
That's true.
That has been the focus in my ministry. Change the laws. So there's been a constant focus on changing the laws, and the drive has been, it's all been done internally. We have not used outside consultants. We've used our own people. We've overhauled our health and safety at work legislation. We've overhauled our major labor legislation back in 2008, employment relations promulgation. So the emphasis, you change the law, you lift the level of service that you've been able to give. When
True.
you change the law, you move us closer to that vision of a decent and productive workplaces for everybody in Fiji. The ultimate way, change the law, make sure that people comply with the law. There's values that are inbuilt into those laws. How do you take just like the values of our constitution?
Right.
This value of one country, one vote, one people. How do you take it out of the constitution and implant it in the hearts and the minds of the citizens of this country? When you get to that stage, you'll begin to see progress take place on
That's
its
right.
own. That's the same thing that we have in our law, in our ministry. We have these ideas of decent and productive work, social justice, good faith employment relations, safe and productivity workplaces. How we take it out of the law, then implant it in the minds and the souls of the people who employ workers, so that they don't need the big bad wolf, the Ministry of Labor, to come out with a big stick and hit them on the head, but they do it themselves. And we encourage people to try to resolve issues on their own rather than waiting the ministry to come in. That is why in all of our legislation, it's built on the concept of the problems are easier solved by those who are in the problems themselves. For instance, if you have a conflict situation, the best way to solve that problem is between those who are in conflict, rather than somebody from outside.
That's right.
That's why all the mechanisms of our legislation are designed to get parties to resolve. Whether it's a labor matter, that's why we have LMCC committees. Whether it's an OHS matter, that's why we have occupational health and safety committees.
That's right. Well, we'll talk more about this. And if you find this interesting, if you have questions for our guests in studio, you know what to do. Call us on 3220-906 or 907. You want to speak your mind? Don't go anywhere, because we'll be back with more. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And yes, in studio with us, we have the Minister for Labour, Public Relations, and also Employment, Industrial Relations, rather, and excuse me, and the Employment, Mr. Chani Usamate. Now, the vision itself, Mr. Usamate, have you had to, empower and also motivate the team within the Labour Ministry as well before taking this out to the public? Have you had to do that within your team?
Yes, I mean, it's something. If you want to, the best way to get an organization to move towards a vision is to make sure that the vision of the organization is the vision of everybody in the team.
That's right.
Yeah. So the way that I think in the ministry, while it has been there, we have not really stressed that a lot. But I think over the past 2 years, we've stressed it a lot. Talk about this vision in your departmental meetings. I actually go around and visit the offices. Whenever I visit them, I will always ask, what is the vision? What is the vision?
Nice.
Initially, when I started off, people didn't know. Now everybody knows.
Exactly.
Now everybody knows. Now after that, we start going around, ask, what's the mission? What's the mission? What's the mission? Initially, people didn't really understand. But now they realize the importance of it. Everybody knows that. That's the way to do it. You get that vision. A well-run organization is where the vision of the leader is the vision of the people.
That's true.
And the mission of the leader, the mission is what you try to do to get to the vision, also becomes the mission of the people. When that happens, the leader can afford to walk behind the people.
That's true.
Initially, leaders walk in front, they tell people, follow me, follow me, follow me. When your vision, your mission is in the heads of your people, you've created the right culture. You can walk behind them because you know they're going to walk in the direction of the vision and the mission. So over the past 2 years, we've had a lot of emphasis on this. And as I said, also a lot of emphasis on looking at the customer, what the customer is saying. And I think we've built up a lot of good progress. Yeah, so that's moving ahead really,
That's
really well.
true. Thank you. Now, is part of that working with that vision? Is part of this was what you conducted last week with the road shows? Was this a practice that was done before, or was this just something that the ministry came up with recently?
I don't know whether it's ever been done before, but we started this last year. We're going around and the roadshow has two purposes.
Right.
It gives us an opportunity to meet our own staff,
Mm-hmm.
remind them once again the
That's
big
right.
picture.
That's right.
Sometimes when you're working in a government ministry, you get carried away with that, what's in your job description,
That's
this little
true.
thing that you're doing. You need to know that this little thing that you're doing contributes to that overall vision, to see that togetherness. And we always stress this. At the same time, it's also a very good way of getting in contact with people, talking to real people rather than just looking at reports, to
Right.
get a good flavor of what they're talking about, what they're worried about. And I always encourage people when I go out on these road shows, I meet with chambers of commerce
Yeah.
and town councils and ask them, do you have any concerns with the way the ministry is doing? Because it gives us feedback. And I'm always telling the people in my ministry that when somebody gives you feedback, it's a gift.
That's true.
You always accept it as a gift. You learn from it, and then you try to adapt things to improve the level of service. So it's allowed us to take government to the people, to take the cabinet, members of the cabinet, a member of cabinet, me, directly to the people so that they can voice their concerns, and we can learn from these interactions what we're doing well
It
and what
also
we're not
builds.
doing well.
It also builds a camaraderie between you and the people, doesn't it?
It does, it does.
In more often than not, you people are always meeting the next in line or the lower management team level. In this case, they're actually reaching right up to the above, and this gives them a sense of ownership as well. Like they know, like you're working for them.
Yes.
So this is also something building camaraderie with the people. Now, Mr. Kenny, I believe you also are part of the workshop team, the roadshow team when they do go out.
Yes.
Okay, and you're in charge of the complaints and resolutions.
Yes, for all the issues that are raised in the roadshows to the Honorable Minister, it is the duty of our team to try and address all those issues and the referrals and complaints and whatever that arises from the roadshow.
Was this team available before, or was this something new that was implemented?
This team was developed, I think, over the last 2 years.
Yes.
Over the last 2 years to
Okay.
address complaints going to the Prime Minister,
Right.
Attorney General, and to myself. And now there's a lot of issues they need to look into.
Nice. So it has made a difference when you come up with the team itself to address issues, because more often than not, a lot of people, I mean, from what I've heard, have come in with complaints, but then they're not tended to like over, quite a number of quite a long period. But in this case, it's more personal. You develop a team that's part of it. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face, though, Mr. Kenny?
Well, there's not much of challenges that we face out there. The only challenges we say that we may face is maybe some employers won't cooperate in all those,
Right.
and maybe some of the systems that are in place. But for the team itself, when we are allocated cases, there's a time limit of 2 weeks, which we have to address these cases quickly. So it's sort of like faster than what the
What used to be in
normal
place
process that the ministry has before.
That's good. So 2 weeks is something that the time period that you've taken. What happens when a complaint is not addressed within 2 weeks? Have you had instances where that has happened?
Yes, we have had instances of this that happened. Maybe employees are not cooperating,
Right.
but there are other avenues and there are other ways that we go through. But we make sure that
2 weeks is the time
2 weeks is the
period
time that we have to address all these issues.
Okay. Now, with the World Day for Safety and also Health, how is this commemorated, Minister, if you can highlight that for us?
Well, this World OHS Day is something that's celebrated every year. This year in Fiji, the focus, let me just make sure I've got the word writing, was safety and health in the use of chemicals at workplace. So here in Fiji, we had the celebrations in the Western, the Northern Division, Central and Eastern. We had the normal celebrations. Then we had one-day workshops. One-day workshops where we pulled people in and taught them how to deal with chemicals. Sometimes we can be very, very flippant in the way we treat chemicals.
True.
So it's, and we're very thankful for other agencies coming and being involved. Ministry of Environment, National Fire Authority, Land Transport Authority, talking about how to transport chemicals. So in the focus of all of this was to look at chemicals and its effect on the health of workers and also its effect on the environment.
This is the international theme, or is this?
That's the international theme.
Okay.
Then we have a tripartite committee that looks into this and arranges all of the programs that we run. And we also ran two model workplaces that we dealt with, CWM and I think a Clearwater, where we looked at how can we practically apply some of these OHS techniques in very practical sense. I actually went up to the CWM to see what they did in that particular project. There are some very simple things that we do. There's a container of chemicals. When you finish it, we put it outside.
That's true.
Somebody comes and takes it away, so we need to, and they don't know what was in that. So those are the kinds of things we have to worry about, and we need to manage the way that we dispose of these containers.
True. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the activities that were organized and also the workshop that the minister had mentioned. That's on Speak Your Mind, so don't go anywhere. And once again, we welcome your calls. If you have questions that you have for the minister or even for Mr. Kenny, feel free to call us up, 3220-906-907. And our topic today was, of course, the World Day for Safety and Health and also the issues on compensation. But that's all to come, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to our third segment of Speak Your Mind. Yes, the Minister of Labour and also Industrial Relations and Employment, Mr. Chani Usamate, our guest for today, and the manager for Complaints and Resolution Team, Mr. Thomas Ikeni. Now, Minister, you did mention about the vision and also the mission of the Labour Ministry. Now, tell us what are some of the services that you also provide for the people of Fiji?
Well, obviously we have, for instance, looking after making sure that workplaces are safe. We have our occupational health and safety.
Right.
It has its various divisions in training and looking at chemicals and all various kinds of the divisions under the occupational health and safety. And related to that is workman's compensation.
Okay.
Now, people have a right, if you're working in a place and you get injured and it affects you, they can expect compensation back from their employer. Then under our other side, we have our section that look after wages. Now we have a whole set of about 10 national minimum wages that we have in place. And the new one that we have just put in place now is the national minimum wage.
Right.
We now have a national minimum wage of $2 per hour.
That's right.
That means that nobody should be employed in Fiji with a wage or salary or wage that is less than $2 per hour.
Would this also, I know I'm straying off the board. Would this also apply to domestic workers?
Everybody.
Okay.
This is the national minimum. The only place that you can have a wage that is below the $2 per hour are if you're an apprentice, you've signed an apprenticeship contract, or if you are a learner in the garment sector and one other sector.
Road transport.
The road transport sector.
So only these three
those.
sectors.
Only this. Anybody else, whether you're working for somebody in the market or you're in the plantation, minimum wage is $2 per hour. This is something that we're enforcing.
Right.
And the other thing that's very important related to this, we've now just passed through Cabinet a rule that says that if you are subcontracting services, my company, I'm subtracting services to Kenny's company, I must make sure I subcontract at a level that allows Kenny to pay his workers the national minimum wage.
Okay.
So sometimes we pass on that.
That's right.
Yeah. So now we're trying to make sure, all of this is to make sure that we can uplift the lives of people at the bottom.
That's true.
So then we have our labor compliance section that looks at all of the labor issues. Kenny looks after that. His team is part of this. That's overall. So we have the labor side, and we have the OHS side, and we have workmen's compensation. And we have multitude of different units there. We register trade unions. We look after making sure that they are, they're abiding by the rules, so to speak.
That's right. For the OHS standard, this is applicable to all sectors, right? Private or public?
Yes, all. I think there might be some exceptions. I think the mining industry might not be covered at present.
Okay.
But all of the others, including government, all workers in Fiji,
they have the right to expect that your workplace is safe. But the focus again is not for us to be the big bad wolf, but we expect the workers. That's why we have a requirement for OHS committees.
That's right.
Where elected representatives of the workers and the management sit together and they discuss issues. They try to resolve it there. See, there's a focus always on good faith employment relations, dialogue, talk about things, trust, try to solve the problem. When it fails, then it comes up to us, and our inspectors go in. We also have OHS inspectors that go out and inspect workplaces.
Right.
One of the things that we have found in the past that there are a lot of complaints coming to us. So what you're trying to do now is to stop the complaints
Before they come.
we get our inspectors to go in, try to resolve, discuss, and then if that fails, then other mechanisms have to come into play.
That's right. Now, when is a worker actually eligible for compensation
For
any sort of when they don't reach, I know when they don't meet a OHS standard, or when there's an accident at the workplace, how do they go about the procedure of claiming for compensation?
workers' compensation, the requirement is if you are if you're working and you get injured and you get at least 3 days, you're sick. That means that that injury is serious enough that it could warrant workman's compensation.
Okay.
3 days. It's a requirement for the employer to report that matter to my ministry within 14 days. If a person dies in the workplace, the employer is required to report it within 7 days. But if the employer does not, the worker or his family is free to report the matter to us.
Okay.
So we can come in and try to resolve the issue. Then we will need a doctor. So for instance, if somebody has an injury, that something happens to them,
Right.
a doctor will have to certify that injury or that disease took place because of the fact that the person was at work.
This is after the 14 days has
Yes.
passed.
Now, somebody can have a disease that he contracts from outside and come and die in the workplace.
Right.
But that death is not a result of the workplace itself, could be a result of something else.
Yeah, that's right.
So the doctor has to determine this illness or this injury has resulted because of the work. Then the doctor has to tell us what percentage of the person's faculties that he had before, the use of his arm, what percentage of that has he lost? 20%, you've lost 20% usage, and on that basis a calculation is made and it is paid out. But if there's an injury, it takes time. It takes between 6 to 12 months for us to determine the impact, and then that workman's compensation.
What about instances where, or situations where the long-term effect comes on after? Like, for example, an uncle of mine actually called me up about this when he knew that I had you on air today. So he asked, because he used to dive. He used to be a diver. And then as of lately, he's had to retire because of his, he had ear problems. He started to have ear problems. Now, apparently, I think he went to the doctors and they said because he was a diver, it has affected his hearing. And he has, issues with that now. Is he still eligible to come in and seek compensation from his employer because of the injury that he's suffering now?
Depends how long ago it is. See, one of the important things in workman's compensation to try to connect the defects that the person is facing to the workplace itself.
Okay.
So that's why we wait for around 6 to 12 months after an injury or something to happen to see what the percentage of incapacity. You don't do the workman's compensation immediately after the person is hurt. You need to see what is the impact of the person. But you can't wait for too long.
Okay.
Because there are other things that happen in the person's life from this year over the next 10 years. So we wait for around, 12 months?
Yes.
12 months,
18
months. Around that time, we will make an assessment at that time. So at that point in time, that's when that is done. So you can't wait for too long because other things also happen in people's lives.
That's right.
We need to make sure that the compensation is done for what happened in the workplace.
Okay, so even if he had to get a doctor's report stating that, yes, this is caused because of your diving, and it's past 12 months, will he still be able to come up with a doctor's report and seek the service of the ministry on this?
Should be able to, as long as it's within 6 years.
Yes, 6 years.
Oh, as long as it's within 6
6
years.
years.
6 years.
Okay.
6 years is a deadline after that. Because, after that, all sorts of things can happen. In the
That's
person's
true.
life, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So far, the compensation that the ministry has seek for some of the workers, have they been successful? If they have, if they haven't, what actually determines the non-success of some of the compensation?
Could be that the matter that the injury did not take place because of the workplace.
Okay.
Or the doctor says that there's no compensation due,
or if the employer refuses to pay, then we can have issues.
Okay. Well, we'll touch more on this, so do stay with us. If you have questions for the Minister, feel free to call us up, 3220-906 or 907, or even if you have complaints or questions for Mr. Kenny, call us up on the same number or text us on 825. You're on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind, and it's been a pleasure speaking to the Minister and also Mr. Kenny on some of the issues and also the services provided by Labour and the World Day for Safety and Health, the celebrations and also the activities that was conducted in the country. Now, just touching on some of the activities. Now, the workshop itself, I believe, was pretty successful because a lot of companies took part in the workshop. Can you tell us a little bit more about these workshops and what is actually being taught during the workshop for the activity that was organized?
Well, the whole focus was on chemicals.
Okay.
How you get chemicals, how you store them, how you use them, you transport them. So they were taught. A lot of times we're dealing with chemicals. We don't really know what could happen if that chemical gets under your skin or how to transport it correctly and so forth.
Right.
So a lot of knowledge was imparted to workers, and we're very thankful for, I think it is Orica and the National Fire Authority, that they actually had a demonstration of the impact of some of these chemicals. I think that's the first step is to put knowledge into people so they understand it and they can go out and they can propagate this idea also. And the use of this tool that we had on the practical tools that we can use to just use things that you use in the rejects from some construction that you have in your building.
That's right.
Use that to fix up the storage of how you manage these chemicals. We came across, for instance, as I was mentioning earlier, places where discarded chemical containers were just taken up by members of the public. They're going to fill drinking water in it. They don't know what was in there before. So you have to be very wary and manage the way that you dispose chemical containers and so forth. So all of that was packaged into the learning program. And I think it was very successful.
Nice. Did you get feedback from some of the companies itself or some of the participants at the workshop?
The organizers of the workshops do get feedback. I don't have access to it, but I think my feeling is generally that there was a lot of, they were very satisfied with the workshop. They're also planning, they have these pilot projects that they're running at CWM, and they're also planning audits of other companies that you do. So once you put in the knowledge, go back and see whether they're implementing it. Because if you have, how do you know whether any training program has been effective or not? You see whether they put it into practice.
That's
so
right.
That is something that they're going to follow up on.
Nice. Okay, back to the workshop, Minister. What are some of the what was the response from the public? What was it like during the workshop and also during the roadshow and also after?
The response has always been very favorable because in the beginning, what they did, they targeted the 200 companies. We have a list of companies that use chemicals.
Okay.
So the workshop was focused on these companies. So invitations were sent to them directly to make sure that their workers can come in and learn how to use, how to store chemicals and how to transport chemicals. And to make sure also that when you're looking at this, we took it one step further. Rather than just look at OHS issues, which is the effect that if you don't manage the chemicals correctly could have on the impact on the workers, what effect does it have on the environment? Very thankful that the Department of Environment came in and got itself involved and imparted its learning and its knowledge onto the participants.
That's nice. Now, Mr. Kenny, I believe you're from the complaints and resolutions sector. Now, can you tell us a little bit more? What are the major, one of the majority complaints that your team normally receives from employees or even employers?
Majority of the complaints that I receive from the employees are in regards to the entitlements.
Right.
What they are supposed to be paid and what is in the regulations or in the promulgations that they are entitled to and not being paid to them. Those are some majority of the cases that we received during the roadshow when we went around with the Honorable Minister.
Okay. Now, was it always challenging when you're approaching employers regarding this?
It's always challenging to approach employers. You need to do a lot of negotiations and you need to be firm in your decisions and what other things. And we also coordinate with the district offices, because mostly in the district offices, they are the ones that are handling the complaints. So our units is always coordinating with them in the settlement of these complaints, and we always give them deadlines on when to have these issues or complaints settled after the road shows.
Nice. Now, has there been a lot of instances of victimization when the labor does, do their job with some of the employers?
Yes, this victimization, but as the minister has already said, the reform is already there in regards to the reform of the labor laws, the employment relations promulgations, and there are mechanisms, and there are also systems and processes, and there are laws that we have reformed which addresses all these issues.
Nice. Okay, when it comes to victimization, though, when people do come back, and what does the ministry normally do after that? How do you handle victimization complaints?
We have our another unit that we have is the mediation unit. Okay. The mediation unit within the ministry deals with you were mentioning about victimization. Okay, we may talk about unfair dismissal. If a worker is being unfairly dismissed from the workplace, the grievance can be reported in the Ministry of Labour, and then the grievance is normally referred to the mediation. And we have professional mediators out there, people who sit down and mediate between the employers and the employee or the complainant.
Right.
And they try and solve these issues. So whatever comes out of that mediation is something that is fair to both of the parties.
Okay, nice. Apart from the complaints on entitlements, what is secondary? What is the second major complaints that you receive apart from entitlements?
Apart from entitlements, we may have other issues like people may say something about service deliveries and all those. But like what the Honorable Minister has already mentioned, we are going through a reform, and we have changed a lot of our systems and processes. Yeah. But we are getting there.
I know.
It's interesting as part of this roadshow. Sometimes we get complaints on things like FNPF.
Right.
Yes.
FNPF is no longer under the purview of our ministry, but we accept these things.
That's right.
FNPF, we've had complaints about, for instance, in Taviuni, people complaining to us. This person, we made a deal. He says, you live in my house, you look after this compound, look after the compound. So we don't know. And then all of a sudden, the owner comes back and tells them to get out of the house. So
right.
It's difficult for us to establish whether there is a worker-employer relationship or not.
Right.
We get complaints about companies in Bua taking their rubbish and burning it on the roadside, and the smoke having an impact on the people driving.
Yeah.
So all kinds of complaints. We get complaints from government workers on these kinds of things. Complaints from employers about training people, and all of a sudden, when they're skilled, they run away. So how do you deal with all of these issues? And constantly as we're dealing with complaints, I keep telling the staff we need to look at things with two eyes.
Yeah.
Not just look at the interests of the workers, but
also
very importantly, we want all the employers to succeed.
True.
The workers must give their best. We can't be looking at things with one eye closed. Always with two eyes. We want, as I said again, our vision is decent and productive.
Right.
To be productive, all employers must succeed. So we have a whole host of these kinds of things. Problems on people complaining, I was not given any safety boot. So I think it's very important. If there's one message that we need to get out to all of the employees in Fiji, we want all of you to be to make a lot of profit, to make a lot of money. But you must respect your workers and make sure that you give them what is due to them by the laws. And also, for the workers themselves, you must give your best to your employees so that they can succeed.
That's right. Well, we'll have more for you on Speak Your Mind. And once again, we welcome your calls or your questions on 3220-906 or 907. Don't go anywhere, because when we'll be back with the final segment on Gold FM. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And yes, once again, we're the Minister of Labour and also Industrial Relations and Employment, and the manager for the Complaints and Resolution team, Mr. Tomasi Kenny. Now, Minister, I've heard you also deal with corporate service within the ministry. Tell us a little bit more about this.
What do you mean by corporate service?
Corporate service, is it with the efficient management, administration, coordination of internal services in relation to finance, personnel, and material assets?
Okay. Well, that is something that is largely dealt with by the civil servants themselves in terms of the permanent secretary, and he's responsible for making sure that everything works well. As minister, I'm more responsible for policy issues, getting sure that results are done. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, we have an emphasis on the fact that if you want to get to that vision, you need to make sure that all your processes, all your structures are in place. So recently, this year, as a result, this new constitution gives a lot of powers
Of course.
to our permanent secretaries. We had a restructure within our ministry.
Right.
Restructure in terms of the strategic business units that we have, in terms of the positions to make sure that our staffing is right. And we've had a massive change also. We've set up our quality policy, our quality objectives, our standard operating procedures that's been revised. So there's been a major change in the structure and all of the processes. And together with these things, these are the major things that you need to move an organization forward. You need to know where you want to go.
That's right.
You need to know where you are today. You need to know what is the structure that is going to get you there. What are the processes and systems that are going to get you there. So that has already been implemented from this year. That's been a major change. And my focus as Minister has always been to tell them, you must produce quality, service excellence, and being in my former job at the Training and Productivity Authority of Fiji, where I mooted the idea of ISO 9000, I was glad to see that this was something that is carried out here.
That's
But these things are already inbuilt into our labor legislation.
Right.
In the Employment Relations Promulgation, there's a requirement there that any organization that has, or workplace that has 20 or more employees, they're required to have this committee, the LMCC.
LMCC.
Yeah,
That's the
Labor
Labor
Management
Management,
Cooperation Consultation. And this committee, it has two roles. One, if there's any conflicts within the ministry, they try
Right.
to resolve it there. Half of the committee is elected by the workers, and half is appointed by the managers,
management.
and they have two co-chairpersons, one representing the workers, one representing the management. So the idea, they try to resolve things there and to try to produce. At the same, another role of this ministry is to try to monitor productivity. And under this part of our legislation, we require companies to start using these productivity enhancing techniques.
Right.
Whether it's ISO 9000 or whatever it is, housekeeping or Kaizen, total quality management, all of these you must implement something so that the idea of productivity should not be something that's only
One-sided.
that's the responsible of the people at the top,
That's right.
but it's something that is the responsibility of everybody in the organization. That's the best way. If you want to, if a team wants to do well, it needs to make sure that the same thinking is in the captain and all the players.
That's true.
All the players includes everybody in that organization. So that is captured in the productivity. So it's a requirement too of all organizations. So there's one thing I would recommend to all workers. If you don't have an LMCC, you need to try to agitate to make sure that this comes in place. One, because it resolves conflicts. It allows you, sometimes some conflicts, the reason that it explodes is because they have not had the opportunity to really talk about it themselves.
Exactly.
Sometimes when there's a conflict between two people here, and they have a conflict about this thing, instead of talking about the conflict, they talk about each other.
They become personal.
They become
basically.
personal.
Yeah.
So what we need situations where people can talk about the issue and resolve it. And sometimes when it comes to us, that's all it was.
And you have representative that represents the voices of the worker and also management.
Yes.
So this way you get to voice your grievances and come to a mutual agreement
Yeah.
where they both agree to the particular thing. Now, how common or how positive has this LMCC been with the employees? Have you had organizations that have taken up this LMCC idea?
Yes, we have an awareness program going. We have a team that does awareness, and we also have a team that does the training on how to implement it and what its roles are, what the responsibilities are. And it's something that we are focusing on very strongly this year. We had the same, as I said, we have the Occupational Health and Safety Committee. That's been very successful because it's been
Right.
built for a long time. This is something also that we're driving.
Yeah, I believe our organization have also come up with the LMCC, and we're still in the nomination stage where we're nominating
Okay.
workers that would like to that we think will best handle these situations. And I was like pretty surprised. I was thinking, what is this LMCC? But then I realized, yes, now that you've explained it to me, it's actually a really good way to have, like you said, increased productivity because you have voices from both sides. Now, have you had employers or organizations that have come straight to the ministry and asked for assistance in coming up with their policies within the company that they're living according to the guidelines of the labor law?
Yes, that happens all the time, and people are always ready to provide assistance. Whether it's a OHS policy,
we have things on HIV, on
Right.
sexual harassment policies, and all of these things. The ministry is more than willing to provide model policies that you can take back and adapt it to suit your own conditions. Not only that, also procedures on how you can address the procedures. They can just look also at the regulations that we have in the legislation. So all that assistance is provided by the ministry.
What about for foreign companies? Foreign companies that do come and set up business here in the country. Does the labor is part of the criteria or part of the requirement that they have to go through the labor law like training, or they have to be educated on this and also informed that this is what they need to have in place?
Yeah, if they're operating in Fiji, then all the laws apply to their employees. So they
Right.
need to be able to comply. We receive complaints about workers in some of these foreign companies.
Yeah.
That's something that, but we don't believe in go around and hitting. We believe in dialogue. Our workers will try to dialogue with them to try to come up with a solution so everybody wins. The company improves. Sometimes they do things because they don't know.
Exactly.
And in that case, that's why we have our inspectors going on. We have a target now, each of our inspectors inspecting at least 32 places in 1 month.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a lot of inspections going. The focus is get the information to them, get them, work with them. Only when that fails, then we take our other measures in place where the stick falls. Where the stove is hot, we tell them, look, the stove is hot. If you touch it,
You get
if
burnt.
they touch it,
Yeah.
they get burnt. Yeah, so that's our focus. Try to help them, work with them, so that you can get a better solution, a better result for them, and a better result for their own workers.
That's so true. Now, they have, one last question. I've just got the signal that it's almost time to wrap up. But one more last question. Minister, I mean, like you said, there's 2 weeks given
Yes.
to labor to actually adjust to address a complaint. Now, what if within that 2 weeks, the ministry hasn't done anything about it, or there's no feedback from them, there's no update from the ministry? What then? Where can the complainant go to after that if they are going to complain about the ministry itself?
Okay, the target for the 2 weeks is only for my unit,
Okay.
for the complaints resolution unit. For the ministry as a whole, under the labor standard services, they've got a process of 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
So if a complainant lodges his complaint with the ministry, 8 weeks is the processing time for the
Okay.
complaint to be addressed. So normally after the 8 weeks, then the complainants start turning up in the office and started asking about their complaints. And by that 8 weeks, within that 8 weeks, the unit itself or the labor standard services can confirm whether the complaint is going to go for prosecution or other issues that
Okay.
other avenues that has to be addressed in.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that's about it. Before we do go, Minister, any last words from the ministry before we wrap up the show today?
No, I think it's just to stress again that what the ministry is focused on, making sure that the workers get their dues in terms of everything that is due to them. But at the same time also, we think it's absolutely critical that all employees in Fiji be productive as possible, and for workers to give their 100%, to be punctual, to give their whole heart and soul mind to make sure that their employees succeed. We need workers who are looked after, employees who succeed, and that's the way that we enhance productivity. That's the way we enhance greater wealth. That's the way we can improve the lives of everybody in this
Like they say, a happy team, a happy manager, and a happy business.
Yep. You
Well,
got
there
it.
you go. Well, that's it for Speak Your Mind this week. We sure hope you enjoyed the program. Until next week, you have a productive week.